Welcome, everyone. You're watching David. Today, I want to talk about the binding of Isaac, which is a story in the book of Genesis about how Isaac was about to be sacrificed and the meaning of that story. We're going to be looking at the Bible verse first, and then we're going to be looking at the common misconceptions that people have of that story today. A lot of people make commentaries that they don't know much about, and they completely miss the mark of the meaning of the story and the real typological significance of the binding of Isaac and its relation to the New Testament. So let's just begin by looking at first the biblical verse, what the story is about. I'll play the audio reading of this Bible verse so you can take a listen as well.
Chapter 22. And it came to pass after these things, that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up, and went unto the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac his son, and he took the fire in his hand, and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh, as it is said to this day, In the mount of the Lord it shall be seen.
So, what is the meaning behind this passage? Okay, we see that one day God just randomly said, Hey, Abraham, sacrifice your son, it'll be fun. And Abraham just said, okay. And he was about to do it and then said, oh, okay, you don't need to do it anymore. I know that you're following, you're obedient to me. What's the moral of the story, right? Mainly, a lot of people think the moral of the story is just be obedient to God. That's what the moral of the story is. It's just a test of faith. And some people then say, this is bad because I suppose the message is that we should be able to, if somehow we have a voice in our head saying, sacrifice your son, you should listen and do it, right? And so the Bible is actually, the Old Testament is like pro-child sacrifice or pro-human sacrifice or whatever. And these misconceptions and objections, first of all, they only arise out of a very isolated reading of the biblical text. And they have a very earthly, like a direct understanding of it. Instead, the approach we're going to be taking when we're reading this text, and this is the patristic way to read this text, right? I'm not saying this is just my reading. It's my reading. Makes sense, right? No, this is the patristic reading of the text. This is the way the church fathers have read the text. This example is, for example, from St. Cyril of Alexandria in his Glyphron the Pentateuch. This is how he reads the text and interprets it. And it's not just him. It's really the church fathers that interpret Genesis read the text in the same way as well. So what I'm going to be showing and illustrating to you is not my own interpretation. It's not going to be my own speculations. It is how the early church fathers saw that biblical text. Okay? And what they saw, first of all, is that this is a typological event. This is a typological story that is prophesying something that is about to happen in the future. It is prophesying the Messiah. Right? Isaac was seen as a type of Christ. And he was a child of the promise. He was a type of Christ. And so him being offered as a sacrifice actually is very important, because this directly relates to where God says in where it is said in the book of John, which is John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. So Abraham was willing to sacrifice his only begotten son. And so God, the difference is God actually did sacrifice his only begotten son for us. That's one of the aspects of it. And we can see the kind of the typology in regards to crucifixion with this event and the crucifixion itself. One of them was that Isaac was laid upon the wood, right? And Christ was laid on a wood as well in the crucifixion. He was crucified on it. The men that Abraham went with, and you can see this also, in the biblical text, but you can also see it in the icon. There were two men that followed Abraham until the end, right? So they represent Israel. They represent the Jewish people who rejected Christ, and they kind of signify and prophesy the Jewish rejection of Christ. So from beginning to middle, right, from the start and until the end, they were following Abraham. But when the end came, and especially if you look at the Psalms, the end is the Messiah. They followed Abraham until the end, until the Messiah came. Then they just stopped and just rejected him, right? And the fact that they came with a donkey, because the donkey is a sign of irrationality. And this is again how Saint Cyril of Alexandria interprets and understands this text. Okay, so we can see several important things going on here, right? We see that Abraham sacrificed his son for the love of mankind, but also at the same time, this wasn't just a mere sacrifice. In fact, St. Paul in Hebrews 11:17 and 19 says, by faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, according that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. So Abraham believed that Isaac will actually be resurrected. So he believed in the resurrection, and many of the Pharisees also believed in the resurrection. So the resurrection was a widely held belief amongst the Jews before Christ. It's not a controversial belief. And so Abraham, again, basing his belief off of Genesis 21:12, where God says to Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, and because of thy bondwoman, in all that Sarah has said unto thee, hearken unto her voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. Right, so just a chapter ago, God promised that he will multiply through the seed of Isaac, and then a chapter later says, oh, by the way, sacrifice Isaac. Right? Is it just, oh, I'm gonna, is all of these atheists, like they kind of like to portray God as, oh, he's just gonna do these random things and irrational, acting. No, it's not because he's acting irrational or emotional. It's because it is setting the stage for a event for the Messiah in the future. That's what it is about. It's not about these like weirdo meme interpretations that a lot of people have. And St. Cyril of Alexandria does say as well that Isaac was in a sense resurrected. So not only is this prophesying the crucifixion, it's also prophesying the resurrection. Isaac was raised up, and what was given to him, what was given instead was a ram. Now the ram signifies divine powerhood, right? The ram is a type of divine power, of the divine nature. And so the ram being sacrificed actually shows us that the person that is going to be sacrificed, or rather the person who's going to be crucified, right? Christ, he's not just some normal random person. He is a divine person that is being crucified on the cross. And this is why we don't, it is in him that all of these Old Testament, sacrifices, etc., were all fulfilled. They were all pointing towards him. Right? All pointing towards him. And these sacrifices aren't in the same way like the Aztecs were sacrificing humans to like please the moon god or whatever nonsense. It's not even about, it's about a sin offering. Right? It was an offering, a sacrifice to atone for their sins. That's why our sins are atoned in the person of Christ. And when we consider all of these significances and all of these aspects of the story of Isaac, the binding of Isaac, becomes utterly transformed into a new light. And the rest of the biblical stories, by the way, this is not just Genesis. They're all throughout Genesis, all throughout Exodus. They are full of typological significances and prophecies pointing towards Christ as the Messiah to the future. And the only way we can really find them properly and understand the typological aspect to it is to return to patristic tradition and their reading of the text, and everything will become much more clear. So that's what I want to do for this video, is to give a little short commentary on the binding of Isaac, mainly from St. Cyril of Alexandria. If you want to read this commentary, you can read Glyphia on the Pentateuch. This, I believe, is from part 1 it's on the Genesis, but section book 3 is where he talks about this much more in detail. I do also have videos talking about that specifically, so you can also go watch that, where I also have screenshots of St. Cyril going more in depth about this topic, if you are interested in this topic, that is. So thank you for watching. If you like this, share it to your friends. Maybe they might, maybe this will be helpful to them. Share it with your friends. Like this video. Subscribe if you haven't. And I will see all of you in the next video. May God be with you all. Thanks for watching, everyone.